right, it is 6:30 on the evening of Wednesday, March 4th, 2022. We will call to order the Forest Lake Airport Commission meeting. Mr. Schmidt, would you please start with the roll?
Yes, Mr. Husnick. Here. Mr. Munson.
Here.
Mr. Lynch is not here. Mr. Schmidt is here. Mr. Steeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, will someone make a motion to approve, or are there any changes or additions to the minutes from the last meeting? If none, will someone make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Husnick. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded, Mr. Monson. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And it passes unanimously, the minutes. Okay, and number 3 on the list is an update from Bolton and Mink, which I take it.
I'm filling in for Silas this evening. So I had the Bolton and Mink report. So the first item on there is the master plan and airport layout plan update. As he discussed at the last meeting, that was submitted to MnDOT for review on January 5th, 2021. MnDOT comments were received back on July 19th of 21. Bolton and Mink submitted the revised ALP to MnDOT in August of last year. And at this point, we're still waiting on final approval from MnDOT. So that still has not yet received final approval. I know Silas has reached back out to MnDOT a couple of times to find out the status of it. So we're still waiting for the final approval of the master plan and new ALP from MnDOT. So, and then once we get that, we'll get that published, put on the website and get it dispersed, but still waiting for approval on the master plan. Anybody have any questions on the master plan or ALP?
We will publish it on the city website.
Yeah, I'll put a copy on. I mean, draft copies are on there now, but I'll replace it out with the final when it's all said and done.
Is that it for their update, or?
There's more.
Okay.
The infield drainage improvements. This is to extend drain tile network to the infield area between taxiway A2 and the PAPIs. Bids were open on April 20th of 2022. All phase contracting was the low bidder at $109,288.92. Where we are with this is we do have a letter which is included in your packet on the dais there that shows the different bid amounts. This was submitted back to MnDOT Aeronautics for an updated grant agreement because we needed to get the low bid amount to MnDOT for them to send over the final grant agreement for us to approve. Once we get the state grant offer, we'll get that low bid authorized at the city council meeting as well as the grant agreement at the same time. And then that'll give the contractor the green light to start getting that scheduled. At this point, we anticipate construction to occur sometime this summer. And as Silas mentions here, there's going to be no impact to airport traffic. We're not having to shut down any of the runways or taxiways as a result of this construction. Airport operations will continue to happen as the infield improvements take place. But again, don't have a construction date at this point. We're still waiting on the final offer letter from MnDOT before we can get that low bid authorized. Do we have any questions on that? The third item that Silas gave me was the capital improvement program. You have a copy of the updated capital improvement in your packet. Again, this was revised based upon the results of the master plan study. So this is now inclusive of all of the projects that are included in the master plan that was submitted to MnDOT. What we're looking at submitting for 2023 is the airfield pavement crack repair, the apron expansion, 275 feet by 80 feet, taxi lane Bravo extension at 276,655, and taxiway A3 extension at 85,000. We're still anticipating funding from the state at a participation rate of 95%, which means 95% funded by MnDOT, 5% local match. And at this point, last time I spoke with MnDOT, I believe their preferred plan or project out of this was the apron expansion and tie down area. That's my new contact that I have with MnDOT. That is on the top of his list for projects for us. So we'll see what they green light, what makes the list for 2023 funding projects. But at this point, those are the 4 that we're submitting for 2023. Just again to remind the Airport Commission, we have we had a meeting last summer with MnDOT talking about the expansion, what would it take to get us the additional lots on the south end of the runway?
They wanted that.
And they want the taxi lane extension and the apron extension done first, just to make sure it's a safety issue, because they want multiple ways to access the runway. So the nice thing is, like I mentioned here, or mentioned in past meetings, is that we're now on the same page with MnDOT Aeronautics. So our CIP matches up with what their preferred schedule is, so there's no more kind of conflict in terms of how we're sequencing. So everybody's on the same page there. And we're still waiting. There is the possibility that that apron expansion could take place as part of the leftover funding from 2022's budget cycle. Have not had any update from MnDOT on that at this point. But if they do have extra funding left over, that project could potentially be advanced or taken care of as part of 2022's funding. I'll know more once they get through their grant authorizations for 2022.
Let's keep our foot in the door.
I'm keeping my foot in the door. I'm keep contacting them as much as I possibly can.
You
Yeah,
think
'cause
that
that-
could happen this year yet?
Yeah, because so what happens is that MnDOT releases the green list. It goes out to all the airports that get awarded projects. Sometimes airports don't do the project even though they're awarded the grant. They may not have local match, their needs may have changed, which then means MnDOT has potentially at the end of the year some funding that's left over that they'll then go back to their list and say, are there any other additional projects that we could then potentially fund? Our airport, I don't want to say sponsor, but my contact within MnDOT Aeronautics knows that we need to get the apron extension done, get the tie-down area done. So he's an advocate within MnDOT for us to see if there is any extra funding to get us to the top of that list. But we won't know that because their budget cycle goes, they're a June to their mid-year budget cycle. So we're getting close to the end of their 2022 budget. And if there's funding left over, it's going to be a hurry up and, get the authorization. But I did give them a verbal at the last meeting. I said, if you guys can find the funds, we have the local match. We will find a local match to make sure that project happens. So
Yeah, we need to do something with that tie down area, no doubt about it. All spring you can't use it because it's so soft in there, so that'd be if we could get that done, that'd be great.
And unfortunately, last year I did have, MnDOT did reach out and says, hey, do you want to get that project done? I responded right away and I said, yes, we do. Let's talk about it. And then whatever reason, it didn't advance and within MnDOT and we're stuck here. But that is a high level project from MnDOT's standpoint. They want to make sure that we have easily accessible tie down areas that are concrete and not grass. So they are aware that we need to get that area done. So it's on the list.
Concrete or asphalt?
Well, hard surface.
Right,
Hard surface.
hard surface.
Yeah,
Doesn't
hard
have to be
surface.
concrete. It's concrete. It's hard
Yeah,
surface.
I don't know that, it would be designed, but it'd be a hard surface to get out to that.
Well, that'd be good news if it happened. Tell you that, for sure.
Any
Yeah,
questions on the capital improvement program?
No?
I believe that covers Bolton and Mink's update for May.
Okay. What do you have on the PAPI repair? Anything?
I do. So MnDOT has been out there 3 times since since December. One control board got replaced, a coil loop got replaced, and then 3, I don't know what they're called, but they're little fuse-looking links that got replaced. After all of that work, the PAPIs are still not functional. So MnDOT came out with, they had 2 techs on site and they ran through it board by board. And they found 3 additional control boards that were at fault. So I've ordered 3 additional control boards. When they were diving into the actual, trying to recreate what happened, they think a lightning strike may have happened and caused a power surge to go through there that fried out the boards. And as a result, one board clearly had, you could see that it was clearly burned. The other 2 or other 3 that we're replacing don't have visual, the damage on them, but they're not functioning. So I have ordered the 3 additional boards. When they arrive, MnDOT will come back out, install them, and see if they can't get the PAPIs back up and operational. There is a NOTAM out, I believe, through, don't quote me, I think it's the end of June, and I'll confirm that. That says PAPIs are not working. So if anybody's coming in and assume that the PAPIs are there, there's a NOTAM that says they're not functioning at this point. That's currently out at the airport.
For as much use as we've gotten out of them, we could make a runway there and forget that.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I'm thankful that MnDOT is taking they're providing the technical expertise to get this, but it's a little bit frustrating for me to sort of constantly have every time they come out, it's the next sort of, but they're also troubleshooting it, and this is also part of the process, so.
Yeah.
We're on track. They're committed to get them fixed. You know, I have a good rapport now with my supplier. I just almost on a first name basis with them, but the new parts are on order. As soon as they're in, MnDOT will come back out and take a look at those.
One of the things that Dan knows about is that I attended the airport conferences here in Rochester a few weeks ago. PAPIs were a big comment, part of it when they were talking about the electrical. Oops, they had one session there that was just about electrical issues with airports and that kind of thing. And the PAPIs were.
Peppies are a big deal, big problem.
Yeah, and touchy.
No.
You know, getting them, they should be, you know, getting them and keeping them set and that kind of stuff. And so I guess we're not alone the way it
No.
sounded.
And we also found out, or I found out, and I talked to Dave Adams about, apparently the PAPIs need to be tested on a monthly basis and go through some level to make sure they don't tilt or, it's a fairly simple test procedure that they have to go through. So once they're back up and functioning, we're gonna add that in, so monthly we tested to make sure that we maintain. I think it was monthly, but there is a test.
I think they even suggested more often than that, so.
So it's just to make sure that they don't fall out of.
The other thing they talked
alignment.
about too is just general maintenance, you know, keeping a log. And I think Dave is doing that, I'm sure he is, or, you know, runway lights or whatever, or how often they go through and check things.
And that's all part of what we're going through at this point. Like I told MnDOT Aeronautics, I said, if you can give me the list of what we need to do, we're happy to make sure that we're performing that out there, but we need some guidance from Aeronautics on what they want us to be doing.
All right, next on the agenda, we have an AED at the arrival departure building now.
Actually, this was a question for the airport commission. Do you want to purchase an AED for the arrival departure building? Where this started was we had another building that had an AED that needed to get replaced. As we're kind of going through the replacement for that, we're looking at, you know, are there other buildings that we could potentially look at placing an AED at? And the airport building came up as one as a possibility. Do we want to put one out there? They're about $1,500 for an AED. There's no maintenance really required on the AED once they're installed. But I wanted to bring it to the airport commission to see if you guys prefer having an AED out there. Like I said, it's about $1,500 to have one purchased and we'd install it and put it out there.
We have to replace the battery every so often, right?
Correct, but they last a number of years though. I can't remember the number. It's not, you don't have to do them yearly, I know that. I can't remember, but it's not very frequently.
The unit be outside the building mounted, or does it have to be interior? Because now you've created another issue for someone to try and get to it.
We'd put it on the interior of the building just because they're not as weatherproof. You know, the one that you're looking at would be an interior for the building. But again, there's not one currently that's out there, but just sort of given the, you know, proximity to, you know, people are all working in the hangar, if they had, you know, if there was an emergency situation, one was needed, having one at least
Or if we have
there.
a public event out there.
I think more for the public event
Oh,
would
yeah.
be more likely, because if something happens in my hangar for someone to get to the building, I'm dead by that time, so.
Yeah.
But for a public event, because then someone would be able to access the building too, because if you come in and you don't have the code to get in the door, even if you know what's in there, doesn't do you much good, but.
Would we have to put a sign up saying AED in the building?
The package we're looking at has signage included with it. It has the AED and the case for it, and then signage that would go up to let people know that the AED is there.
Have an idea where it would go?
At this point, I have not looked inside exactly where it would be in the AED building, but it would be in a prominent space where people could easily see it, or would not be tucked in a corner.
Right by the door or something there, yeah. Personally, I think it's a good idea, you know.
It's a good idea,
for
it's
that one
just a
thing, yeah.
$1,500 expense that if the city has a higher priority location, I don't know that it's a high priority other than at an event. But yeah, it's a good idea.
If something
they've got
happens
it
at that
and-
event, we'll be glad that we had it.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna talk to Dan about later on about some ideas for that funding. We'll see what's, a couple of ideas I have. So I don't want to get into it now.
Roger that.
All right, next, maintenance and operations grant update.
We have received an updated maintenance and operations grant. So what we did this year, or let me back up. So 21's maintenance and operations grant, we left money on the table because we did not have expenses that cover our full maximum. So there was a small amount of money that was left on the table for 21, just because our expenses were low, because plowing, there wasn't a lot of plowing that happened in 21, and mowing, since it was so dry, you know, we didn't have to mow as frequently. In 22, MnDOT allowed for airports that got maintenance and operations grant to use a portion of that to cover a capital expense. So I asked them if we could use a portion of our maintenance and operation grant to cover our fuel pump that was replaced out at the airport last year. They agreed to that. We just approved that grant, that grant agreement. I think it's about $7,000 additional funding that we're getting. So in essence, the fuel pump, instead of being funded at 70-30, I believe it went up to like 95% MnDOT funding, 5% local match. What that's going to do for 22 is that's going to reduce our overall amount that we can get reimbursed for maintenance and operations at the airport. But with that reduction, I still don't think that we're not losing money. And in fact, we're guaranteeing that we're getting all of our maintenance and operation grant funds for 22. So what'll happen now is that now that we have that addendum or that extra grant approved, MnDOT will now go back and issue me an updated maintenance and operation grant for 22 with the updated amount. So the regular amount minus the 7,000 for the fuel pump. That remainder will come back to us for a grant agreement, and then I can submit back for all of the maintenance and operation expenses for 22. So it's been, for a project that we typically get our grant agreements in August, we're a little bit behind the schedule on this, but that's more on MnDOT's side. And we're finally getting the grant agreements in place. However, I think 2 months until the end of the fiscal year. So once I get the grant agreement approved, I'll get everything submitted right after that fact. So we are going to be getting that grant. We just wanted the airport commission to know that the next step has been taken, and we did receive funding. So the fuel pump will be funded. Our local match was reduced because of the maintenance and operation grant change.
Infield drainage, I know you talked about it a little, but the grant status.
The grant status, and again, this is a MnDOT change in how they're doing their grant agreements for 22. So they won't allow us to get a grant offer letter until we get a grant bid. So in the past, we've been able to combine all of our engineering expenses and all of our construction expenses into one grant agreement. This year, we've had to separate out and do an encumbrance for the engineering and a separate grant agreement for the construction. So we now have a grant agreement for the engineering side of it that is in place. Now that we have the bids opened up, we're going to go back and get our grant agreement for the construction side of it. But as I told Silas, I don't want to authorize the construction bid until we get that grant letters, to make sure that we have all of our paperwork in place before we authorize the bid, given that it's a sizable, expense. So I anticipate having both of those that next grant agreement, hoping in the next few weeks for council approval, and we'll approve both the bid and the grant agreement at one time, and then authorize that for construction. So MnDOT is not making grants easy for me. However, we're all learning this new system, so it's new. They've changed it for everybody for 22.
All right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, no, you don't foresee any glitches along the way, do you, Dan?
No, I don't. And one of the reasons, that's why I held on getting the contract award. I told Silas I want to wait until we get the grant offer letter, just on the off chance that we have any type of glitch. I don't want to have an authorized bid without having the funding source behind it, because technically once we authorize the bid, we're on the hook for the expenses. I want to make sure that grant letter is there. And it's not that MnDOT's going to, not pay us or not give us a grant offer. It's just, I don't want to have bills coming in before we get the encumbrance and the grant agreement. So that's why this project is a little bit slower and a little bit outside of how we normally would approve stuff historically. But I don't have any concern about not getting the grant offer letter.
All right. I had one kind of follow-up question on a lot of those things regarding just the airport budget. We haven't really seen a budget in front of us in a long time, and we usually just like to make sure we're in the black. And so I'm just curious where things are at, just budget-wise.
I will bring an updated budget to the next meeting. We're starting budget conversations now internally. I know, I think 2 years ago, I presented the 20-year sort of long-range CIP budget. I reworked those numbers, given the fact that we now have a new master plan and a new lot construction schedule as a part of that. And I'm working with Silas to figure out what the lot absorption will be. So how many lots can we build a year? How many can we lease out, et cetera? When I reran some numbers based on the expansion, it was a much better picture than it was previously.
Yeah,
It's
when
still-
you start adding lots and the lease rents, it really, because we were right on the bubble kind of every year.
Correct, and still, even the next 10 years out for the airport the budget looks good. It's when you start adding the runway reclamation project in,
Yeah.
I think 15, 20 years, that's where the numbers go upside down. But we can offset that with infrastructure fees for the new lots, similar to how the existing lots were done. And all of a sudden, when I looked at how many lots that we can bring on per year, and if we fully build out in the next 20 years, the numbers were much better.
Yeah.
So I'll bring that back in July when I get it all.
I just have one more question too. Dan, they're working on our audit lately. Is that completed?
It's not completed yet.
See, that'll give us a number, a more firm number of
Yeah.
what we actually have, you know?
Is that citywide on it?
Yes.
And I do know, just anecdotally, the numbers from last year, we did come in under budget on a lot of items. So, and fuel sales were a little bit higher than projected. So, we're building that reserve back up to cover those projects down the road.
That point is we just have a better number
Yeah.
once that audit is complete, so.
Do any commission members have any additional items they want to add to the agenda? If not, we have a guest here. Would you like to have say, step up to the mic?
Would actually, yeah, thank you. For the next several years, starting in August, I'm going to be gone a lot.
Could I have you just state your name?
I'm sorry, James Kane, hangar number 30.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I took a job up north, quit my job here at the hospital up the road, and I start my new job in August. It's way north. It's like Rosso north, like damn near. So first thing I'm going to do up there, of course, is build a hangar. But in the meantime, I'm keeping my hangar down here, and my plan is to, once I finish my plane, is to back and forth it. But that means I'm going to be gone a lot, especially during the summer months. And is there a sanctioned lawn care service that I can hire to take care of the outside of my hangar so it stays nice and neat?
Mr. Kane, have I got a deal for you?
Oh, yeah, sign me up.
Will you do mine too?
Kate Newble is interested in aviation, and she flew with me in the Cub, and she's flown a couple of other times. She's a student here at Forest Lake High School. I pay her to mow my hangar 3 times a month. She does an excellent job. I have her phone number right here next to my heart. I will gladly share it with you, and she will take care of your needs, no problem. And if she doesn't,
I'm gonna need this
I
for
will.
a few years now, then I just,
That's fine, because I got you covered too.
Well,
You
talk
just
to me
talk to
after
me
this
and
is all over.
we'll get you taken care of.
okay. And what happened to the sign that was hanging there that said Daniel?
Funny you should mention that, Mr. Kane. That sign is laying on the floor in my hangar with 2 little pipe clamps on it right now, squishing the epoxy together because it broke. It split. So I picked up the pieces. I've got it glued together. I'm also manufacturing little LJ brackets to hold that sucker up so it is not dependent on the screws hanging from it.
Sure.
Instead, it'll be hung from the bottom so that it will not come down again.
Okay, so they're not gonna rename it something different?
No, we're going to name it James Kane Memorial Field.
No, I would not take away from Dan DePonte, of course not. That's all I have, thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Good to see you, Jim.
Thank you.
Anything else? And if not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Hey, Jim, where's that project at with your home build?
So close.
Are you really?
Getting the cowling, I got my panel is 99% done. It's not here, it's up in St. Cloud.
That's
They
exciting.
bring it down here, I'm gonna start wiring it. That's my summer project. So it's really close. I want people to drop by and take a look at it.
Well,
I'm telling you.
we'll do that.
My neighbor Ed Trudeau has a 701 in my hangar that he's working on right now too, so I'll send him over to you. I move to adjourn.
There's a second.
So moved.
Second, so moved. All in favor of
Aye.
adjournment? Aye.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. We are adjourned. It is 6:54.
6:54.